Omar Baddar. He's a member of the National Policy Council of the Arab American Institute. Omar, thanks very much indeed for joining us. A quick word then on this attempt to get another resolution out of the Security Council. Clearly the language is crucial and possibly a deal breaker. How important is it, do you think, for the Security Council to get a resolution out right now?
Yeah, I think it would be very significant for the UN Security Council to issue a resolution that the U.S. signs onto. We all know that the United States has a very lengthy history of stepping in to veto any resolution that tries to hold Israel accountable for its endless war crimes against Palestinians. And in this case, it's even a lower bar of merely asking for a halt to the ongoing slaughter. And the fact that the U.S. has been intervening to ensure that Israel is allowed to continue the slaughter with complete and total diplomatic protection and with continued U.S. assistance has been a scandal. This is a level of atrocities that the entire world wants to see ended immediately, and the United States is standing in the way. And if we can actually agree on language, this dispute between suspension versus a complete end to the hostilities speaks to the illusion that the United States has that Israel is capable of actually defeating Hamas militarily and that there is a more humane way to do it. Israel knows differently. They're massacring civilians because that is the only thing they actually can do. And they know that trying to go in a more targeted way to seek out Hamas fighters without harming Palestinian civilians is a situation in which Israel is just bound to be defeated even more resoundingly than its current failure that it's experiencing.
For the best part of 70 years now, the United Nations has wrestled with the Israel-Palestine conflict, and particularly with its relations with Israel. America has been the senior partner in that through the quartet, through other negotiations, the Madrid conference. Various presidents have got involved. But America's position is clear. Do you think it's time now to seek either a different forum than the United Nations to tackle the issue of Israel-Palestine, or to find a different broker other than the Americans to go between the two parties?
Oh, there's no question that the United States' effort has extremely been detrimental to any possibility of a peaceful solution to what's happening in Israel and Palestine, simply because the U.S. has intervened to ensure that Israel has complete impunity to entrench the occupation, to practice apartheid, to commit these war crimes. So absolutely, we need to shift away from the United States as a broker. The problem is that in international institutions, the U.S. still continues to be a country of tremendous leverage. So when Palestinians go to the Security Council, the U.S. steps in to veto. When Palestinians try to get the International Criminal Court to prosecute Israeli war crimes, the U.S. applies tremendous pressure on the criminal court to ensure that it does not try to hold Israel accountable. And the same with many allies who try to intervene in a positive way, who come under tremendous U.S. pressure to ensure that they don't support Palestinians in any meaningful way. So the U.S. role has been incredibly significant, and we are witnessing very significant shift in public opinion within the United States, where even though the entire political class in the U.S. opposes a ceasefire and has this reflexive support for Israel, right or wrong, no matter what they do, a majority of Americans actually does want to see a ceasefire, and a majority of young people fully understand the extent to which Israeli violence and oppression are the driving force of this violent reality that exists, and they want a fundamentally different kind of relationship. So we see things, even though they look pretty depressing in the immediate present, are trending in a more positive way in terms of what future U.S. policy can actually be.
Those young people you talk about, particularly in the United States, perhaps, do they deeply understand the history of the occupation, how Israel has become what it has become, and what the true political dilemma for the Palestinian people is? It sometimes seems that Gaza and the killings and the raids are all part of a sideshow compared to the realities of occupation, borders, right of return, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, there's certainly a certain level of political depth that will never be received by an external country that is not directly invested deeply in that history. However, young people in the United States know enough, which is that U.S. support for Israeli occupation and apartheid is morally indefensible and has to come to an end. They understand enough that when they look at human rights organizations throughout the entire world describing Israel as an apartheid regime, describing the crimes of its occupation, its land theft, its killing of civilians, quite a lengthy list of atrocities, they know that the U.S. should not be supporting these atrocities. And when they look at the U.S. giving unconditional military funding to Israel, that Israel is not obligated to abide by any human rights rules or regulations when they receive that aid and use it to commit these kinds of war crimes, that this is something that the American people do not want to stand for. Young people throughout the United States believe in human rights, believe in equality, believe in justice. And it's quite clear that U.S. foreign policy on this issue in particular has been a moral stain on America's conscience that has to come to an end. And I think we will see that hopefully within our lifetime, where there is that significant change in U.S. policy. Sadly, it'll take a few years, if not decades, but it's certainly coming as we look at young people more and more speaking more vocally in opposition to this kind of foreign policy that enables Israeli criminality that gets in the way of any possibility for peace and justice to actually emerge.
Omar Baddar, pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening.